Alright, in this video we're going to learn how to factor a polynomial, and when you find the GCF, let's say, maybe we'll have a difference of two squares. So let's take a look at what we do in that situation. So in part C we have 9d to the fourth minus 4d squared, and we always first want to factor out any common monomial factors. So we're going to write our two terms, 9d to the fourth and negative 4d squared. And it looks like from both of these two terms, we can factor out a d squared. So they both have a d to the second power that we can divide out. So when we do that, we're left with a 9d squared minus or negative 4, and that's it. So we're left with these two terms, and our greatest common factor between these two terms is just 1. So then our GCF, we're going to multiply out d squared and 1, which we get just d squared. So going back to our original problem, we're going to factor out the d squared, leaving us with 9d squared minus 4. So the second step, if we have a remaining polynomial that's a binomial, we first check to see if it's a difference of two squares. So what that means is that when it's a difference of two squares, if our problem was 9d squared minus 4, the difference part comes from the fact that we're subtracting two terms. And the two squares, we're looking for perfect squares, which means if you took the square root of both of them, you actually get an even, or it's called a perfect square. So if you take 4, that's actually going to be 2 times 2. And 9d squared, well, 9 is made up of 3 times 3, and d squared is made up of d times d, which actually gives us a difference of two squares. So in short, we call it dots, difference of two squares. So when you factor a difference of two squares, going back to the left here, we're going to rewrite our d squared on the bottom, and when we factor this binomial, we're actually going to make this into a product of two binomials, okay? And we have one's going to be a plus and one's going to be a minus. So how we figure out what goes in each of these blank spots, we'll look at the first term, 9d squared, going back to our problem, we can actually, the first terms in each binomial has to be the same. So to get 9d squared, we have to write down 3d and 3d, because 3d times 3d is going to give us 9d squared. And to get negative 4, well, what do we have to multiply? What two numbers can we multiply that's the same to get a negative 4? Well, we have a positive 2 and a negative 2. So this is how we would factor a difference of two squares. Once you recognize that you have two terms left over, you're subtracting the two terms, and then both terms are actually a perfect square, you factor it into a product of two binomials where the first two terms is going to be the same, plus and a minus sign, and the last two terms are going to be the same. So this would be completely factored, and there's on the right of your note sheet are common difference of two squares that we're going to practice. So this would be completely done, and we can move on to our next situation. Alright, so this next example, we're given three terms. And step one, we always check for the greatest common monomial factor, or the greatest common factor. And we're going to write all three terms into our little box here. And then pull out one factor at a time that's in common with all three terms. So I'm going to first factor out a 5, leaving us with an x cubed minus 5x squared minus 6. And looking at all three terms, we can actually factor out an x as well. So we're left with an x squared minus 5x minus 6. So in all three terms, looks like the greatest common factor between all three of them would be 1. So then we're done factoring here. So then we multiply all of the red numbers out, giving us our GCF of just 5x. So going back to our original problem, we're factoring out that 5x, leaving us with an x squared minus 5x minus 6. And check to see if the remaining polynomial is a binomial, which is not, so we're going to skip to the third step. If it's a trinomial, we're going to factor it like in using the methods that we were taught earlier. So I'm going to make my diamond, and the bottom term, or the bottom diamond, is going to be made up of our a times our c. So our a is a 1 times our c, which is negative 6. And then our b term is negative 5. So two numbers that multiply together to get a negative 6 and add together to get a negative 5. Negative 6 and 1. Let's see, negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. So that works. We're going to replace negative 5x with negative 6x and 1. just like that. And we're going to group the first two terms together and the second two terms together. Find the GCF of x squared minus 6x. It looks like we can divide both terms by an x. So we have 5x from the original GCF times x minus 6, because we factored out an x from the x squared, leaving us with an x. Factored out an x from negative 6x, leaving us with a 6, negative 6. Second group, looks like the greatest common factor is just positive 1, so we're actually going to put plus 1, leaving us with an x minus 6. So finally we have two groups, the first set of products and the second set of products. And it looks like both products have a common factor of x minus 6. So we have the 5x times x minus 6, and the first group we're left with just an x. And the second group we're left with a plus 1. This would be completely factored. Alright guys, thanks for watching. It's going to take a lot of practice for us to get really good at this, so be patient, be very careful with all of your work, and definitely make sure that you are listening. Okay, take notes on the side if you need to. Have a good day.